Everybody, this is Professor Tedone, and this is our PowerPoint on family communication. Family communication is much more than sitting at the dinner table every Sunday evening. It is quite complex. Nurses often enter the world of families and their communication patterns. The CHN, or community health nurse, for example, enters the family's homes and becomes very aware of different family structures. The 5 different domains are listed as communication, power, decision-making, role structure, norms, and values. Our PowerPoint will review these and give meaning to different terms not recognized. Communication is required for survival. It is important for structural units, such as families, to exchange their feelings and desires, needs, information, and opinions. If they differ, clear and functional communication amongst families is crucial to maintaining a nurturing environment through which the necessary feelings regarding self-worth and self-esteem develop and become internalized. And this information comes from Friedman, 2003. Because we don't all share one brain, communications can sometimes be distorted and misunderstood. This can happen when one or both parties are anxious, angry, or mad. Often, communication can be misunderstood when discussing an issue with a person that is not within the same age range, different sex, different frame of reference. For example, there are books and books written about men versus women, adults versus teens, and adults versus children in communication. Communication distortion can lead to misunderstandings and actual breakdowns in communications within the family structure. Paul Walzowitz is a renowned Austrian psychologist and philosopher who lived between 1921 and 2007. During this time, he summarized that communication has 5 major principles. These major principles include: it is impossible not to communicate, as all behavior is communication. Unless you are in a deep coma, you will exhibit. Communication has 2 different levels: information and relationship. Number 3, punctuations or sequences of a communication. Number 4, 2 different types of communication: digital and analogic. And number 5, all communication is either symmetrical or complementary. While verbal communication can be avoided, nonverbal communication cannot. Nonverbal communication comes in hundreds of forms that fit into the categories of gestures, facial features, body responses such as shoulders shrugging, crossing arms tight across the chest, rapidly moving fingers, etc., and sounds. One must be very careful with nonverbal communication, as it is sometimes involuntary or habitual, such as a teen rolling his or her eyes every time the parent opens a sentence with, "Can we talk?" Once something is said, it cannot be unsaid. Words stick like fly to flypaper. That is why it is so important to be calm, give good eye contact, and good speaking cadence and a normal tone of voice. Fold hands loosely on the lap as opposed to folding them tightly crossed across the chest. A small child does not know how to control his or her body language. This is where tantrums come into play. And there is nothing uglier than an adult having a tantrum. Principle number 3 states communication involves a transactional process. What does this mean? Transactional communication simply means communication involving an exchange of messages between a sender and a receiver. This is similar to verbal transaction. Each communication involves a preceding communication and history of a relationship. Communication between a mother and son may always be a loving exchange, as opposed to the teenage daughter who is always on the defense when talking to her mom with any verbal exchange they may have. Communication can be altered by what is known as a feedback loop. This relates to a change in communication based on its effect on others. Digital communication is a relatively new form of communication. With digital communication, the ability to share body language and voice inflections is not present. This can lead to gross misunderstandings and misconceptions about how the receiver is transmitting the sender's information. Analogic communication is just about the opposite of digital. It is based on body language. This can often be misinterpreted by the receiver also, or unintentionally transmitted by the sender. Some examples of unintentional analogic communication would be, "Why did I roll my eyes? Why did I bite my lower lip? Why did I nod my head yes when I really did not understand what was being said?" Abraham Lincoln understood the power of analogic communication when he said, "Action speaks louder than words." A blog on James Grunig's excellence theory on the symmetrical communication model tells us that this theory is one that also fosters mutual understanding. In the family structure, communication based on mutual understanding is reciprocal behavior that can enhance the family values, roles, and power. Symmetrical communication may not be shared amongst an entire family unit. It is sometimes seen between siblings or parents, but not between siblings and parents. Each family unit has its own unique style of communication. As a family ages out, routines can set in as repetitive circular patterns of communication. For example, a very young family may have dinner every night at the dinner table, with each person having his or her own seat. But when the children are older, they may choose not to sit with the family anymore, with teens popping in and out dining experience and leaving to the sanctity of their bedroom. Communication is very much affected when the circular patterns break down with each person acting in his or her own sphere of existence. Spoken language can be a dangerous weapon when words are used as bullets into somebody's soul. The good news? We can control what we say. The bad news, once the spoken word exits the mouth and enters others' ears, it is impossible to retrieve what has been said. The ideal communication for any family unit is known as functional communication. Wolf tells us that this is the cornerstone to a healthy, successful family. Functional communication includes clear, direct transmission and reception of both the content and instruction of the message without confusing body language. This occurs when congruency of the content and the instruction are both evident. Good functional family communication includes a functional sender and a functional receiver. The sender uses firm, clear statements of the situation, clarifies and qualifies what is being said, and is important to ask the receiver for feedback and to be truly open and receptive to the feedback. It's important for the functional receiver to think about what is being said and before assuming or understanding. The receiver responds only after clearly understanding what is being said by the sender and asks questions as necessary. The sender will send the information, and the receiver attempts to understand the message fully before evaluating and responding. This requires good, open communication techniques. These may include having a firm, clear statement of case or discussion, clarifying what is being said, and asking for feedback and being receptive to the feedback that is received. The dysfunctional sender, on the other hand, will do all the wrong things when looking at good communication. He or she is ineffective completely. It is dangerous to jump to conclusions before hearing the sender's full case. This can cause anger and a puzzled response from the person being communicated with. Expressing feelings that are unclear or unjustified, being angry without convocation, making judgmental responses, and giving mixed messages are all things that a dysfunctional receiver and sender can do. A dysfunctional sender can have verbal messages that do not match his or her body language. The dysfunctional sender will be the beginning of a bad communication experience. Grudges can be held. Bad cyclical communication can ensue. As this cartoon shows, being a good listener is key to good communication. Does this look at all familiar? The dysfunctional receiver is one who doesn't listen, which can cause and infuriate the sender. Using statements that start with yes, but. The yes, but statement really says, no, you are wrong, I am right, and this is why I am right. Insulting each other rather than communicating about a problem can often stop what could be meaningful conversation. This would include something like, what, are you stupid? Didn't you hear what I just said? Not exploring messages when the receiver makes assumptions without hearing the sender completely, giving premature advice, cutting off communication, and not validating messages are all part of a dysfunctional receiver's actions. Any one of these can be the start of an ongoing, senseless resentment of the other family member. This is a picture of my family. My son is on the right, standing next to his beautiful wife. My husband and I are next to them with our daughter leaning on my shoulder. This is a fairly typical family unit. Each family member has a common thread amongst each other. For good communication to ensue, each member must recognize and respect each other's differences. There must be dynamic and reciprocal communication between one another, allowing feelings and emotions to be shared. In order for this or any other family to survive and thrive, each member must trust each other enough to be unashamedly open, with mutual respect for each other's feelings, thoughts, and concerns, spontaneity, authenticity, and self-disclosure. When I use the term dysfunctional family, it is not really hard to think of one or more that fits this title. When a family has poor communication, the family members may generate unclear or indirect transmission or reception of the content and or instruction of the message being presented. The primary factor generating dysfunctional communication is low self-esteem of the family or its members. Unfortunately, it is not uncommon for two or more family members to gang up on a different family member. Dysfunctional communication for family members may include all or some of the following traits: self-centeredness, seeking to get something from others to meet your own need, agreeing to give and then giving reluctantly or resenting the gift, give in a hostile, defensive, or low-sacrificing manner, and playing the martyr. Having a lack of an understanding or empathy when a family member can't recognize the effect of their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors on others, can't or purposefully refuse to understand others' thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, having feelings of powerlessness, closed areas of communication with unwritten rules of subjects approved and disapproved for discussion. This can occur when family members want to resolve an old issue, and the receiver puts up a hand in the stop pose, refusing to negotiate or listen. This is a sign of dysfunctional communication. Factors affecting family communication can include the following: ethnic, cultural background. Styles of communication vary with learned culture of an individual, affects the amount and type of talk, emotional expression, and tolerance for conflict. Life stages. Depending on the stage of the family, the communication needs and distracts the changes. Gender. Women tend to be more expressive, send clearer messages, are more sensitive, and more responsive. Family form. A family is defined broadly today. Makeup of the family may affect communication. And a mini culture of the family. Joining of two cultures produces a third culture that must define itself. These are all factors that can ultimately affect how the family communicates. Bottom line, families that communicate well with one another are families that succeed. When we enter a patient's home and we are dealing with all these different families, it's good to be aware of these different things that make up good communication, and perhaps you can help lead them in that direction. Thank you so much, and have a blessed day.